So 2023 begins and the collecting community shifts to yet another hype train. While 2020 was dominated by nostalgia and the vintage resurgence, 2021 and 2022 had alternate arts dominating the arena, and then 2023 decides to have a different approach with Japanese female trainer cards, otherwise known as waifu cards. Now, waifu cards had a slight short-lived trend as they seemed to be an unstoppable force at one point. Though there is one particular question that every collector has on their mind. What caused this phenomenon and what made waifu cards go from this to this? To understand the hype, it's imperative to understand how different audiences engage with various types of content, and this doesn't just include Pokemon, right? One of the most common misconceptions I see is that people like to think that Japanese and English markets for cards are one for one. I mean, even if pull rates are identical between sets, it does not mean if a card is popular in an English set that it automatically means that it's going to be popular with Japanese fans and vice versa. Different regions and different cultures have different preferences. You see, there are a few things to understand regarding regions and audiences, right? Only some things that are very successful in Japan will be successful for English audiences and vice versa. I mean, it is true to a certain extent, though. I mean, a lot of the time, different regions do share love for similar franchises, right? And we can see this like shared love across different regions, right? With like Pokemon, for example, right? Dragon Ball, which is both huge with English-speaking audiences and Japanese. Yu-Gi-Oh, which has a huge English and Japanese competitive scene. And then, you know, even with gaming, right? Final Fantasy, Kingdom Hearts. These are both massive in Japan and English audiences love them as well. Though other times there's distinct differences with what audiences prefer. And this doesn't include the TCG only. I mean, we can see this with the series called Yokai Watch. This is a huge series in Japan that never really got the same attention with English-speaking countries. Another big example of this in video games is Dragon Quest. Now, yes, this is decently loved with English audiences. I mean, it is a popular game and it does have a pretty big fan base, though I could confidently say that a lot of people, you know, watching this right now have probably never even played a Dragon Quest game. Whereas in Japan, Dragon Quest is the biggest gaming franchise to exist. It literally has been awarded with the Guinness World Records for its popularity within Japan. Even though it is quite popular within the English audience, it doesn't even compare to Japan's popularity. Though conversely, Western audiences enjoy games such as Elden Ring and Skyrim, you know, The Witcher, Overwatch. These games don't actually make that much noise within Japanese audiences, right? And what's funny is that even some Japanese created games do much better in English-speaking countries. Like Metroid is a perfect example of this. Even though it's originally created in Japan, its major success lies with English-speaking audiences. Now, I know I'm going on a bit of a tangent, right? But this information is important to understand before diving into this topic. Also, I want to say, if this is your first time tuning in, welcome. This channel covers Pokemon collecting, Pokemon investing, and I also rip packs on my channel. If you enjoy these types of topics, feel free to subscribe. I'd love to have you on board the channel. But it's also important to understand that female full art trainers just don't carry the same popularity with Western audiences. I mean, we can even see this with Erikas Invitation from Pokemon 151, right? The Japanese version is in the top 4 chase cards from the set, including Master Ball Reverse Holos, while the English counterpart isn't even considered an expensive card for the set. I mean, you even have Ivysaur, Wartortle, and Charmeleon illustration rares being more expensive than the Erikas Invitation. Now, when 2023 happened and this new Waifu Craze happened, along with the Iono being one of the fan favorites of Generation 9, it created a lot of hype. However, there's a few key reasons to what caused this, and there's a few factors why this happened. Though a lot of it had to do with a hype train taking effect for something that isn't much of a genuine fan favorite, right? Female trainer cards were never that popular with English audiences, though during this time period, it caught a lot of hype, meaning once the hype died down, the actual fan base and fan demand would not be there, as it was only driven by a time period of hype. It wasn't authentically created as a genuine fandom within English audiences. It only trickled down from hype. So when the hype left the room, the genuine fan base for these female trainer cards weren't strong enough to maintain these prices. This was also multiplied by the fact that the Japanese yen experienced significant fluctuations and remained quite weak throughout 2024, which ultimately did not help the prices hold their initial values, right? So when thinking of what style of cards English audiences love, these are like the base set Charizard. So even if there was a hype train and hype trains eventually died down for something like the base set Charizard, it still has a massive amount of collectors who genuinely love the base set, and they're kind of apathetic to the ups and downs of the market swings because they love base set Charizard. Though that's like something like base set Charizard, it's kind of immune to the hypes of ups and downs because the fandom will always want the card. So as time went on, the trend for these waifu cards died down, and the only collectors left collecting these waifu cards were from regions who genuinely preferred this type of card, whereas English audiences never loved these cards to begin with, so it was only held together by an immense amount of hype. And once that hype went away, it was only locked within the region that actually loved these cards. Now, what's really interesting about these waifu cards is the price dips that they had, which I'm about to go into right now. All right, so I am on the prices for these Japanese female trainer cards, and I'm on PSA's auction realized prices. Now, the reason why I like going on this, it's just an easier way to get an accurate representation of prices because, I like doing this because you can actually see the PSA 10 copies of the cards, and it's just a great way to look at it. And it's also sometimes TCG Player doesn't have Japanese cards, so you can't actually see it on TCG Player graphs, and price charting is all over the place with their pricing sometimes. So I much prefer this to look at PSA 10 copies of cards. So right now I'm on the Iono Special Art Rare from Clayburst in PSA 10. Here out right from the floodgate, first sale. So we can't ever really look at first sale as the best kind of aggregate for the data. But anyway, it sold for 1,600 US as the first sale in 2023. But looking around this point here, right, this is where we really want to see. And it was selling for consistently $990, $900, keeping going here, $899, and then it had this little spike here for $1,054. That was in the middle of 2023, so just about a year ago. Now check out, this price kind of tumbled down to around $730, then it sold for $598, and then it climbed back up to a $1,000 card. And these sales were around the 2023. This was literally the peak of this waifu female trainer card hype period, right? So you would have had a lot of English audiences jumping in on this as well. But you can see here, the hype started crashing down. As it goes down, it's going now $532, $520, and we go to the most recent sales. There's a lot of sales, $338, $374, and you can even see here $315, and right now it's consecutively selling for around that 350 USD mark. That's a pretty major price decrease, and it's something that we need to be aware of, and you need to be careful when you go on these hype trains because, like I mentioned at the start of the video, when it was just created by a hype train, it couldn't maintain those prices. The next one is the Erikas Invitation Special Art Rare PSA 10. Check this one out. So you can see here, and we just want to go here when it released around that 450 to 485 mark, right? That was just, a little bit later, late 2023. We're looking at what this is selling now, and you can see it's consistently selling for around $116, $115. Most recent sales, $95, $91, 78 USD for a PSA 10 of a special art rare. So you can see the price has significantly dropped. We go on again and we can see the Iono from Shiny Treasure in PSA 10. Check out this. This was the peak of the waifu hype period. You can see it was selling for $435, $355, $304, $350 USD, and you can see now this is consistently selling for around $97, $101, $118 USD, a pretty significant price decrease for a card that is the chase card of the set as well, or like the second chase card of the set. So again, these price differences are pretty significant. We go on to the next one, right? So here we are on the Worker Full Art from Paradigm Trigger in PSA 10. Check this one out. This one had a really interesting one. So you can see here, it was selling for around 46, 46, selling for around 47 USD. Then I had this peak, right? This was, in the middle of this waifu hype, selling for around 87. And you can see now consistently selling for around 20 USD. So again, even these smaller chase cards, they did experience that boom in that waifu craze. They've really dropped down. It's really calmed down because the audiences just cannot keep up with the prices of these cards, and the fandom and the fan demand isn't there. And this is what I talk about a lot, right? A lot of people don't speak about this. Your Gengar VMAX, your Umbreon VMAX, your Blaziken VMAX, whatever the card is, it only sells with the buyers in the market. And I think a lot of people do not realize how important that is. Your card only sells for what buyers are in the market at that particular time. If the buyer isn't in the market, it does not sell for the price that you desire. Doesn't matter what you list it for, it's what the buyer will pay. And this is very important to know when you're investing in collectibles. It's not just, oh, these are gonna maintain these prices. I bought this for $1,000, so I'm gonna be able to sell it for $1,000. No, completely wrong. It's only for what the buyer is in the market. You have to remember that when you invest in collectibles. Next one on the list, we're on the Sonia Full Art PSA 10. You can see this one as well. Here we go, middle of the waifu hype, sold for 1,045 USD. Then you can see a little bit of a drop here to 860 USD. And then again, it kept going down, down, down. And then it found like a little bit of a period where it was holding around this 385 USD. And you can see the most recent sales now 153 USD, 156. Huge hits, man. These are significant drops in prices, right? Probably some of the biggest you've seen. There is a chance that these can climb one day up again, but for now, it's not looking too confident. Checking this one out. This is the Miriam Full Art PSA 10. This is a great card as well, right? I mean, I'm not even that much of a, waifu kind of collector, but I do like this card artwork, right? Oh, look at this. Look how strong look how strong the market was, particularly at the hype for the waifu cards. You can see this early last year. 530, 488, 490, 470. It was really holding this stronghold of around a $500 USD card. And you can now see, look at this price kind of drop. Now it's selling for around $49 to $50. What an enormous price drop. That is very, very significant. And you can see it wasn't just one or two sales. You can see back in this period here, it was consistently selling for $500. And you can see now these prices, a massive crash has happened with these waifu cards. Moving on to the next one, which is the Miriam Special Art Rare PSA 10. Now, I do like the full art, but this one is one of my favorite cards from Scarlet and Violet. I really like this card. Even the English counterpart, both the cards, they look sensational. Check this out. You can see here, peak of that waifu hype, selling for 1.4K, 1.2K, 1,000 USD. Expensive cards. And you can see now, check out the most recent sale points, 200 US, 205, 162. PSA 10 copies of chase cards. Massive price decreases, right? Moving on to the next one, which is the Misty Full Art PSA 10. This is 2021. You can see it was selling for around that 200 USD mark, 260. Now, this is a card that all those cards actually released during the waifu hype. This card was available before the waifu hype. You can see this spike and when the waifu hype kind of happened, $613, $585, 557 USD in the middle of that kind of period, right? Which was May last year. This card is now selling even below what it was selling in 2021. So, this is pretty significant price drops, guys. This is now selling for 173 USD. It's an old card. It was selling for 500 US, now 173. See how insidious that hype train can be. Can you see why I always talk about alt arts and I always tell people to be careful when buying alt art? A lot of people say, Phil, you don't get it. These are the golden cards of Sword and Shield. People are very, very bullish with it and they really hold and they say, no, these are the chase cards. I always take a much more pragmatic approach when I look at that because I don't want people, getting in these positions where they're paying 500 USD for a card, 1,000 USD for a card, 2,000 USD for a card, and when the hype dwindles down and the buyers aren't in the market, you're now selling this for a massive loss. You got to be careful with that. Moving on here, we got the Starmie Full Art PSA 10. This was selling consistently 255 US, 180 US, 232 US, 158 US. You can see the sale prices, the recent sale prices, 82 US, $98 US. Again, more than half of a price drop. Now, obviously these female trainer cards still have huge popularity, and one day they could most certainly bounce back and they may dominate the market again. Though just like I mentioned at the start of the video, it's likely that these female trainer cards may not have such an impact for English-speaking audiences to maintain these astronomical prices. Though, as I always say never, right? Audiences' preferences between regions can change, and they can also influence one another as well. Though it's funny because maybe these female trainer cards were purely fueled by hype trains. However, whenever thinking of Pokemon investing, there's always good Pokemon investments and there's bad Pokemon investments, right? It's funny because a lot of the time people always ask me, hey Phil, what's the best Pokemon investment to make right now? Though no one, and I mean no one, ever asks me, Phil, what Pokemon investments should I avoid? And the exact answer to what Pokemon investments you should avoid is packaged within this video on screen right here. Within this video, I speak about the 4 Pokemon investments that I never buy, and I go over these cards in great detail. If you want to know the answer to that question, click that video on screen and I'll see you there.